Hello, I'm Alexa. You're listening to Adaptive by Design, and today I'm speaking with Mera Bradley, who's a senior interaction designer at a tech agency called RightPoint. After spending the early parts of her career as a medical assistant in neurology, just 1 year later, Mera pivoted to explore careers in UI/UX design by enrolling in Springboard's UI/UX design bootcamp. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things transitioning into design, bootcamps, and interviewing to land that first role. So let's jump into it. Mera, on your website, you shared that you loved product design because the work allows you to use both the analytical and creative sides of your brain. I actually hear this a lot. So could you start by sharing when you first learned about careers in UX design and how you made this connection?
So I actually started off on the pre-med track. When I graduated with a bachelor's in cell molecular biology. And then I also did like a post-bac and was pretty much like all set to apply to medical school, but ultimately I made the switch to interaction design. I took a little bit of a look back into what actually really interests me and kind of pull different parts of what I experienced while getting my degree. I really enjoyed lab. I love writing lab reports, all of that. But then I also liked being able to express my creativity as well. So I kind of wanted to find something that blended the two of those together. So, scrolling, looking at blogs, came across a lot of what I do in my day as a fill in the blank, and I came across a UX designer. And so I kind of just kept looking into that, kept searching for people on social media, more videos, and I was this is really interesting. So one of the people that I ended up following was recommending this book called About Face. I ended up getting that book, looking at it, and I was just okay.
That's a big book.
I really like it. Yeah, it is.
That's a big one. Yeah.
It's a really big book. I have not read it all the way through.
True confessions. That's okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's super thick.
but it's a good book. Yeah, I know. I actually personally have not read that one, but no, it's one of those good go-to books when you're trying to learn design.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so sorry, you bought the book and then
yeah, I got the book. I was kind of looking through it and everything, kind of getting a sense of what UX design was, and I don't know, it's something just kind of clicked almost. I was this is what I want to do. Cool. So, yeah.
Cool. When you were in medical school or on that path, what were you doing to get to that creative itch in your personal life? Was there anything that you were doing, or you just knew that was missing and you needed more of it? So
while I was on the pre-med track, there wasn't actually too much that I did outside of my coursework, but I did come across this opportunity through a friend to help out with this it was to help pre-health students kind of figure out their paths, because they're quite a few different paths to actually get to medical school. I ended up being someone that they were interviewing just for some research that they were doing. And they were hey, do you want to help out the design for this? And this was I didn't know what UX design was at the time. So I ended up helping out with that, and I was you know what, I really like it. And I would actually be working on this project until 1 a.m., having a great time, having cartoons on in the background. I was I'm really enjoying myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was something that also pitched that.
Yeah, it's that's what you know. I love that. That's kind of relatable. I went to design school for my undergrad and got a BFA in graphic design. But I remember very specifically, I had this one day during the semester in college. It was a day where I had 3 or 4 studio classes, which are all 3 hours long. And so it was a long day. It was a long day, that all to say. And I had my interaction design class as the last class of the day. It was a night class, 7 to 10 or something. And I'd already had a number of other studio classes before. And I would go home after that class and I was so psyched. I was so energized by that class. I would keep working on it into the night. And I feel that's just that's when it's if you're working on this thing, you're staying up super late, you love it, that's when you've you're hitting something good when it comes to something you're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. So you bought About Face, you bought the book, you're reading into it. There are a lot of boot camps that you can choose from, right? So I guess I'm just curious, what attributes in a design program were you looking for? It ultimately led you to the Springboard class, but what was important to you back then?
So when I was searching, I looked at a few different things. I knew that I wanted to do a boot camp. I just finished college, and then I did not a boot camp, a post-bac. I think that lasted for a year.
What's a post-bac? Is that something you do in medical typically?
I'm not sure if it's strictly conducive to the pre-med track, but it's basically, so once you graduate like with your bachelor's degree, you're able to like continue taking classes. Like sometimes there's like more structured programs that like last for like 2 years, sometimes 1 year, and you take a set of classes. And there's also like a DIY boot camp. I keep saying boot camp. There's also a DIY postback where you can just take whatever extra classes that you need in order to meet the requirements before applying.
Okay, so like get more experience in between the kind of like the next bigger set of like schooling.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, sorry. So you were in the midst of that post-bac, or maybe okay, let's pick up where we left off.
So I think I just finished the post-bac because I ended up entering Springboard May of 2021, I believe. So I think I just finished the post-bac, and when I was like looking at what I could do to like get into the UX field, I was like, I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to like go back for like another 2 to 4 years. Like that's just wasn't for me. So I came across some boot camp, and also like my phone was recommending things to me. So
the phone is very smart.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was just telling you offline, I'm 35 weeks pregnant, and for the last 35 weeks, I have been just bombarded with all of the pregnancy and baby things that you could ever imagine on Instagram and like otherwise. So I feel you on that. But it's useful, right? Like some of it's actually really useful. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, I love a good targeted ad.
Yeah. Especially when you're trying to like get into design for the first time. It's like good to know what's out there.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I was just like looking at like prices, location, like duration of the program, because I wanted like a remote program as well. And then also just like, and just like how extensive like the curriculum was. And Springboard just kind of like ticked all those boxes for me.
Cool. Awesome. And then I guess, you've been working full time as a interact designer now, right? So what has that experience been like? What's it like working at Right Point? Just want to kind of learn a little bit more about your background in design before we jump into some more focused questions on what it's like, being a student and learning design with a bootcamp.
Okay. So I really enjoy working at Right Point. One of the things that kind of like made me gravitate towards Right Point was that it was an agency. So as like a new designer, I like the opportunity to be able to be exposed to like different industries while I was learning, as well as them having like a great senior staff. The project that I've been working on, like everyone that I've worked with has been just amazing. Like I love that team so much.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Makes a big difference. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I learned so much from them as well. So like I feel like I really like growing as a designer, like working with the people that I'm working with and being given the opportunities to like do some things like on my own or like try other things, like do research as well in the project. So it's just been like an overall like really great experience.
You said, so you feel like you're saying you're doing things on your own or experimenting with new types of research. Like, can you give a little bit more like color to like what that looks like? So are you leading your projects now? What is your experience like working with the other designers on the team? What is that all like within the context of an agency?
Within the agency, we all like work on like different projects, or we're assigned a different project. Quite a few people that I also like haven't really had like one-on-one like interactions with within the agency. But within the project, at first it started off like a smaller team, but that also grew. And as it grew, I got some opportunities to kind of like make some design decisions and have more like FaceTime with more of like the clients that we're working with as well. So that's like how I was able to like grow. Because at first I was like, I'm still under like the actual like design lead, but I'm also kind of like there's so many like different terms within the agency. But like, it's really interesting because like on the project you can be called one thing, but like within the agency like you're something else.
Okay.
So like so like within the project like I am the design lead for one squad, but within the actual like agency, like the company that I'm like working for, Right Point, I am a senior interaction designer. So I'm not like a design lead within the actual agency, if that makes sense.
I got you. Yeah. I think it's just a good nod to, it sounds like you found like the right place for you right now. Because a lot of it, this is just like in your career. It's just like, are you at a place you feel like you can grow and learn and getting opportunities to set you up for opportunities where you can move into that next phase in your career? And so it sounds like you're getting that with where you're at Right Point. So it's really great
Definitely.
to hear.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, I want to talk more about, your experience as a student being in the boot camp and the Springboard boot camp specifically, because a lot of people listening to this podcast are people who are considering a career in design and trying to figure out like what makes sense for them. So kind of like putting yourself back in that point in time, how were you feeling before you started the program? Like what sort of questions do you remember having that you like before, that like first day starting the program?
So before that first day, I know that I was quite excited and this is gonna like sound like a little cliche, but
let's hear it.
When I was just like, okay, like I'm done with pre-med, like I'm not gonna apply to medical school. That was like all the way like ready. Like I took the MCAT, I had like my volunteer hours, like everything. So I decided not to and ended up signing up for Springboard. Like the sun shone a little brighter, the colors were a little bit more vibrant outside.
Yeah. I was like so meant excited. To be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah,
cool.
I was really looking forward to it.
Yeah, all good vibes. Did you have any questions or were you mostly just like, all right, I'm like ready to start this, like let's get going? Yeah,
pretty much the second one. I was very ready to start it. I knew that I was going to have questions once it started, but yeah, starting off like I was like, yeah.
You're just like, I'm going to be a sponge. Okay. So what do you remember about your first day then? Like what was that like? Who did you talk to? What did you do? I know like the Springboard course is self-paced as well, right? So maybe it could look a little different for different people, but I would assume like the first day there's some sort of like onboarding maybe. So what was that all like?
There was an onboarding. It was kind of like a syllabus thing almost. So like a lot of setting up different things, getting like introduced to the Slack channel, taking a look at like your curriculum, and then there was also like some introductory articles to like go through. So it was So
the introductory articles, was that like actually a part of the class already?
I think it might have been like the first module. So it was just like a little sneak peek into like what we'll be doing.
We're gonna ease you into this. Yeah. Okay. But like, Springboard's course is self-paced, right? So you have to, from my understanding, you have to sort of set up what your days and your weeks will look like around how much you're gonna get done within a certain amount of time. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess how did you go about managing your time? And like, did you even think about that on day one, or was it something that like came a little bit later, maybe like later on that week or something?
At this time, I was still working at the neurology office. So I really had to like manage my time because I was still working like full time as a medical assistant. And then I was also like doing Springboard when I got off work. So I did like have some hours set up for what I wanted to accomplish each day and each week, and that was also something that I talked about with my mentor.
Cool. Okay. So did you take the whole course while you were still being a student during the day?
For the most part, yes. But then I ended up leaving my job in August. And so the last few months I was like full on Springboard.
And how did you make that decision to quit the other thing or to stop the other thing?
So I had a friend who was just like, hey, I want to live in New York for a month. And I was like, okay, I'm down.
Awesome.
And like my job, you had to be in the office. And I was just like, I'm going to go. So
I love it. Very spontaneous. And especially if you were already like planning to switch into this new thing. So you mentioned like getting on the Slack that first day. What is the community like when you get in there? And what, from my understanding too, like with Springboard, you're in a cohort of students. So a bunch of people start at the same time. Did you start to meet some of them? Did you interact with the students much? Like, what did that look like?
I would say that personally, I interacted with the students a little bit more like at the very beginning. We were all like doing introductions, and also like as you're going through the boot camp, there's like moments where you have to like respond to something or post something on Slack and like respond to someone else where you can mark something complete. So if I'm being completely honest, that was probably the extent of my Slack usage while I was in the program.
Projects are very important to, landing a job, quite frankly, in design. I think it's great because with a portfolio of design projects, it's one of the best like objective ways that really we can evaluate candidates for a role like a company is hiring for. But projects are really important. So like when it comes to like a boot camp or some sort of design program that you're going to take, like it's important to consider like what kind of portfolio pieces you're going to get out of that program. So I was kind of curious to just learn from you, like what was one one of your favorite projects that you worked on from the course, and how did it go? How did that project go for you?
Okay, so my favorite project kind of changes immediately out of the program. I would just say my favorite project was like the first capstone that we did, which was like a little bit more in depth, a little bit more like encompassing of like everything that we've learned from like research to like actually delivering like the MVP, like the prototype at the end of like our entire design with like the user flows and everything. But thinking about it now, I'm thinking that my favorite might have actually been the sprint project. It lasted for a week, I believe. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think that's probably my favorite. It lasted for about a week, and maybe because like that's how I kind of work now, like on sprint, and that's why it's my favorite. But yeah.
That's what I was gonna guess, actually, because just for context, I work at a product company, and I've only really worked at startups or like a product company. And although I haven't worked at an agency, I like know kind of how they work. Like you like work with clients, and you often are like handing off work to that client, and they'll kind of like finish developing it, whatever. So I would imagine that you're doing a lot more of like facilitation and sprint design kind of work in that sort of environment. So for some reason, before you answered that second part of the question, I was like, Mera is going to say the sprint project, because that's what she does now and she loves it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. How did that work then in the program? Was it like a theoretical design sprint? Did you work with a company? Because I know also Springboard does set you up with that opportunity to like work with external companies to get some experience. So what was the sprint like?
So the sprint, it was kind of like, it was on your own. So you were like kind of designing more so like in a bubble. And each day was like, I think the first day was like sketching the design, like you got the design brief and everything. And so you would like sketch and then like do user flows. And then I think a bit of competitive analysis, and then wireframes, mid fidelity, high fidelity, and prototype. And so you had to do that like within a week. And then they also like space it out for you for like what exactly you needed to accomplish each day. I don't remember exactly what the order was or what day, but it was interesting. It was fun. I think it would have been really interesting to get like, I don't know like how feasible it's in, but to get like more people involved, like I don't know, not necessarily have like a dev involved with it to like actually like build it out, but like have like something that like lets you practice like design dev handoff, which is something that like I didn't really know about until actually like entering like the job field, like at right point. So that was definitely like a skill that I had to like build up, like being able to like communicate the designs to like dev and like hand it off that way. And I say, yeah.
I mean, that's the challenge, I think, of like education. It's like there's so much to learn, and there's also only so much you can kind of fit into, I don't know, a program that's like 9 months long. And so even for myself, like I said, I went to design school, and I got a BFA in graphic design, actually. So that's a little bit of a different story. But, you know, back then we weren't even, I didn't have any projects where I was working with any sort of like clients or companies. Until I did internships, I didn't work with like engineers or product managers or anything like that. So it's like, that is some of the best experience, like once you actually like get a job or an internship sort of role. So I definitely resonate with you on that. It sounds like the sprints or sort of the projects that you work on at Right Point, they might operate a little bit differently than like the framework you used when you were doing Springboard. So and that's I'm not surprised about that either, because the stuff, although it has like a pattern to it also does differ depending on like the company that you'd work for. So I don't know, just I'd love to hear a little bit more about what does that look like now? Like, how do you run or facilitate a design sprint with Right Point? So
it really depends on what exactly the project, like the project within the project is.
Okay.
So if it's just like, if it's just like a small like component update, then that won't take like an entire sprint. We have like 2-week long sprint, so that'll take like maybe like a couple of days. But then also you have to like get like approvals from like the rest of the design team. So
it's like a smaller project.
Might be involved. Yeah,
smaller project still could take about 2 weeks time. It's not like right.
Yeah, it could take 2 weeks time depending on like how many revisions need to be done and stuff like that. But if it's like something a little bit bigger, like a page redesign or something like that, then it'll start off with like some research, some competitive analysis. If we can like get like the research team involved to like kind of dig in a little bit deeper about like what exactly users want, then we do that. Let's see. Then a little bit of like sketching, some wireframes. Like it moves a little bit faster than what was like kind of shown in bootcamp. So
are you
it's a lot
comparing
of
that Are you comparing that to like maybe the capstone project though, where you're like, from my understanding, that project is one where you're like starting completely from scratch. You're like kind of even starting from a place where it's like, how might we solve this like larger wicked problem then to defining a more specific problem. But with a design sprint, that's like typically a week long project where like you go from like essentially nothing to an idea at the end of it. So are you running any sort of sessions like that at Right Point, or does it tend to be more of these a little bit more drawn out projects where it'll take at least like a minimum of 2 weeks to work through something?
So it changes. It varies. It depends on like what exactly the ticket is asking for. So some of them can be like very small, like just simply updating a component.
Yeah.
Which won't take long at all. And then some of them are like larger, like a page redesign, which could take like a couple of weeks, which is like the length of our sprints. And then others can be like way longer than that, which will take like multiple sprints. But that's all like planned for.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Back to the boot camp. What was one of the biggest challenges you weren't expecting going into the program? How did you navigate this challenge?
Not sure if this was necessarily a challenge. But there was like at one point in the course, like I know seeing like my mentor mentioned that I was kind of behind timing wise, but I think I ended up actually like finishing about 2 months early. So I think it might have been like a pacing for like some of the capstones, maybe that's what it was. But
okay.
Yeah.
And why do you think that was a challenge for you, the timing?
Because, well, I don't even know if it was necessarily a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like one of those things where I was like, oh, am I falling behind? But even my mentor, she was like, no, don't worry about that. Like like most people say that they're like falling behind at this point, just because I think it was like maybe capstone 2 takes like longer than what was originally planned. But yeah, once you like get past that, then everything starts wrapping up like really fast. And so you end up like catching up or even like finishing early.
Yeah. Well, that's good that you even just had like your mentor to kind of like bounce those sorts of conversations off of, to like make sure to like check in with you and say like, hey, just want to make sure you're on track here to finish the class, or to finish the course rather. Yeah. Well, the mentor relationship is really important, I think, when it comes to boot camps. And I think just like a design educator is important to like any program, like whether you're going to a college, like traditional college program or otherwise. So would love to just learn a little bit more about what your experience was like working with your mentor during the program. What was your first interaction with them, and do you remember how you were paired together?
Actually, I don't know how they pair the mentors, but and yeah, she just got assigned to me.
Nice. Was it a good match?
It was. I love her.
Okay, good. I think there is some logic to it. Did you fill out like a survey or anything, or no?
Oh my goodness, I don't even remember if I did or not.
Nice. No worries.
Yeah, I have no idea if I did or not.
Okay, well, we'll skip that part. What was your first interaction like with your Springboard mentor?
I believe it was video call. We always had a video call once a week, I believe, where we just kind of like got to know each other. Yeah, like conversation was a little bit ago. I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but I think it was more so like an introductory, like get to know each other, like what brought me to Springboard, what she's currently doing, what she was doing at the time. And yeah, just getting to know each other.
You were just so excited and like hyped on adrenaline that first day that none of this is quite coming back. Exactly. Also, I know it was a bit ago, so obviously it's a little bit hard to remember, but it's good that you had such a good relationship with her.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can you just talk a little bit more about like, how would you describe your relationship with your mentor? It sounds like you met once a week. What sort of, what did she offer you during the program that was so valuable?
Honestly, I was just able to talk to her about everything. Like, we could talk about stuff like outside of the program, talk about stuff within the program. Like, she gave amazing constructive criticism, and like really helped me in the program and kind of prepare for like what to expect as an designer, as well as like answering any.
Can you talk more about that? Talk more about like, what do you have an example?
She would kind of tell me like what all she was doing as a designer, because at the time she was actually working at an agency, which nice. Not the same agency. But yeah, she was working at an agency at the time, and she's actually the one that kind of like got agencies on my like radar, and just kind of like letting me know like the benefits of like working at an agency versus like the benefits, or because she worked at a few places before as well. She gave me like kind of like her own like insider knowledge on like agencies, startups, and she also would like kind of walk me through what her day was like as a designer, like what all she would do that day or that week whenever we chatted, and any like ups and downs that she also faced. So it kind of like put everything into like perspective, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. Even for myself, like in design school, like I had great relationships with my teachers, and a lot of my teachers were working professionals too, which was like really helpful. But I was one of many students that they were teaching at the time, and so I definitely had people in my life who back then I like seeked support from and felt like I had somewhat of like a mentor relationship with, and it really does go a long way being able to provide those like extra insights into what a day in the life is like, or like understanding terms, or okay, you learned this framework, this is how we do it from kind of like a learning perspective, and this is like 101, but it might look a little bit different, might have a little bit different, might shape out a little bit differently in like a real life context, and this is kind of what that looks like that is invaluable. So being able to like have someone to connect with and talk about those things is so important.
Definitely.
Are you still friends? Are you still in contact now that you're outside of the program?
So I haven't talked to her since last year, I want to say. But she is in New York, so I am planning to visit her actually next month.
So fun.
Yeah.
So fun. Yeah. Sounds like you're New York bound. That might be in the cards for you. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. I definitely, and I feel like, it's just great to hear that you still have a connection with her. And I think a lot of career related challenges can be solved by a really good friend and someone you can just like kind of go to and be able to ask questions to, or vent, or even just to catch up with, to work through something.
Definitely.
Okay, so I also noticed that you're a peer mentor for Springboard now. What exactly do you do in this role? And why did you decide to take it on?
So it's changed a little bit since I started. Before we ended up having like a kind of quota of interactions that we had to like meet each week, but not anymore, which I kind of like. So now a lot of my interactions are more like one-on-one, or like a student will like message me on Slack and just like ask like whatever question that they have, like whether it be a specific project that they're working on, or talking one-on-one like on like a video chat where they want me to take a look at or hear their ideas for their capstone project, want any like job advice for like applying to places, or like just looking around, and also just like any advice that sometimes they like want advice about just like navigating the program while also like juggling other things like working or like school or like something like that.
It's so great that you're offering support in that way. Like why are you doing that? Like, why do you care?
So I kind of took the role just to kind of like help other people like in their transition from like another field to UI UX. Like I was so lucky in getting the mentor that I did, because she had like such a huge impact on me and my experience with Springboard. And so I want like people to have like a positive experience as well.
That's such a gift, Mera. I'm so glad to hear that you feel that way. I feel similarly. I think like I had so many people when I was learning design just like show up and help me along the way that I just get so much energy myself from like starting a podcast and like talking about design, or like making videos on YouTube, and that I just want to create more connections with people and like help other people feel that same way, because it made such a big difference for me. So
definitely
such a gift that you're giving back. That's so cool. So I want to talk a little bit about interviewing for jobs, because design careers in UX and product design, they're really competitive. That's the truth of it. And getting that first job can be really challenging. But I think what's really cool for people, especially for people who transition into UX design, is that often that means that they come from some sort of other career, or have some sort of like background in an education that's like separate from design, and that they can use that experience and like leverage it when they're interviewing. So I was wondering, leveraging your background in cell and molecular biology and neuroscience, right? I was wondering how you use that to help you when interviewing for roles.
So it was kind of like a mixture of responses that I received from that, to be quite honest. I'm not going to include like any conversations that I had with like recruiters, like the initial type of thing. There were some interviewers who like were really fascinated with the like having a degree that was like outside of design or interaction about like anything like that. So there were some that were just like, oh, this is really cool. And they like really valued like experience outside of like what I guess would be considered like a traditional path to design. And then there were others that were just like, okay, so what experience do you have? So,
Well,
yeah,
I guess
it was
like
kind of a mixed bag.
how did you let, because like with neuroscience specifically, or even like you talked about like when you were pre-med, that you know, you had like all these like really analytical, you used like your analytical brain a lot and had like analytical skills. Were there any skills that did overlap, like when it came to what you learned in the program, and do you apply those skills still now, like as a designer?
I would say,
And if it's no, that's totally fine too.
yeah, I would say mainly with research. If
Okay.
I'm conducting like a survey or just like gathering like data, like survey data from like responses, maybe not as much aside from like design system work, like building components, like making sure like everything is like works, is clean, like the naming makes sense, the grouping makes sense. Like I feel like that was where like the analytics would come in a little bit, but outside of that, yeah.
Yeah, so mostly like when it came to like research, those research skills, there was more overlap.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And how did interviewing go for full-time roles? Were there any challenges or lessons learned?
So I think overall it went pretty well.
Were you set on going to an agency because your mentor had such a good experience?
I would not. I would not bet on it at the time. Like whatever job I got, I was just gonna go there. But I was really lucky in that I had 5 interviews and 2 job offers at the end of it. And one of them was the agency. Another one was like I think it was ed tech. And so I ended up going with the agency.
And why is that?
I partly because of like my mentor and like what she was telling me about like just how in an agency, like as a early designer, like you just have like so many opportunities to grow within like working with like different people and experiencing like different industries. And so like that was kind of like top of mind when I was like making that decision, because I was like, okay, I do want to get a lot of exposure. I want to learn as much as possible. And I was like, I think the agency is the way to go, as well as the fact that like I ended up meeting like 5, I think, people from the company, and they were all like terrific. So I was like, okay, I really like y'all. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that's a lot of it comes down to like who are the people that you're going to work with, and that's super important. And like how you can grow and learn like in that role. Yeah.
Exactly.
How did interviewing go though? Were there any challenges that came up, or did you feel like it was kind of like a breeze? Like I was set up for success from the beginning.
Oh my goodness, no. So it was super like, oh my goodness. Looking at some of the like LinkedIn, like quick apply things and being like, oh, 200 other people have applied to this job already. Like, oh,
Yeah.
the applications were super saturated. So I think I actually ended up applying to like, and I kept an Excel spreadsheet. So I ended up applying to like 200 places in the span of like a month and a half. And, like getting those rejections, it's like,
It's tough.
it's a part of it. But yeah, it was just like,
Yeah.
I just want to like work. So that was like maybe like one of the challenges. Another was,
How did you persevere through that though?
I think this is actually something that my background kind of set me up well for. um, so yeah, with the rejections, I was just like, okay, like that's fine. On to like the next application. So I didn't really like take it personally or anything. It was just like it's a part of the application process. Like you're going to get rejected for something like this. So yeah, it was just kept moving.
Yeah, you're just like gotta brush this off, move on to the next.
Exactly.
Learn and grow. Nice.
Exactly.
Okay. And then like once you did start talking to like recruiters or hiring managers, is there anything that you felt like was challenging part of that process? Is there anything you can like share with a potential design student now that could like help them maximize their potential?
If you like anyone is like not super comfortable speaking, practice that because it is a lot of talking, a lot of like presenting your like projects within your portfolio. There was like one like whiteboarding challenge that I had to do. So I like practiced that for like 2 days. Like I was just like presenting the whiteboard challenge to like anybody that was with.
Nice. Were you presenting it to, were you like presenting it to your parents or something?
Yeah, I presented it to my parents. I would like call up my friends. I would like present it to them. I would present it to my brother. Like
Nice.
literally anyone. I would like set up like an imaginary audience and I would like present it as well. I was like, oh, good question. Okay. Like,
I love that. Okay, actually though, was the whiteboard challenge virtual?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That is like great advice because I think it's super important to practice the like facilitating the thing. If it's a presentation, if it's a whiteboard challenge, whatever it is, practice like opening up a Zoom call or some sort of like video call platform and like figure out how technically it's going to work before going into it, because then it's kind of like going on stage for a performance. Like you have to like get a sense of the stage and the environment, where the exits are, and like how to turn on the audio, just like that's like actually a really good lesson, I think. Is like put yourself in that moment as a realistic way as possible, so that when you are in that moment and now people are looking at you, you're like, I've been here before, it's okay. How about portfolio review stuff? So for anyone who's like not familiar with this, one of the big challenges, I think, with like, getting that first job is presenting your portfolio. So there's the presentation aspect of it. But I guess like, how did you feel about your projects? Did you end up ever having to like kind of go back and edit them, getting feedback from any companies that like didn't decide to go with you as a candidate? Was there any sort of like insight there that you feel like you could share with the audience?
I would say that I did most of my portfolio edits after reaching out and like kind of making connections on LinkedIn with like other designers who would like everyone that I spoke to was like super nice, super helpful. So they would be like, yeah, like send over your portfolio link, I'll take a look at it, leave it a note. And I was like, okay, perfect. So I got all of that done before I started doing the interviews. And within the interviews, like I had a go-to for what project I was going to present. And for me, it was the IDP. I wanted a project that was essentially like a quote unquote like real life project.
Mm-hmm. For anyone who doesn't know, IDP stands for Industry Design Project. That's what IDP stands for. Perfect. Okay. So that was the one that you felt like was the most realistic because you were working with an actual company on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
cool.
Yeah. And I also worked with like a couple of other designers as well. I felt like it was like the most kind of like fleshed out, like best one to present.
Yeah. And like realistic in a sense because you were working with a client and you worked with other designers. Yeah. I think like, as a student, it's totally fine to share personal projects or like work that's not necessarily like client facing in your portfolio to get interviews. But of course, it's going to be it'll be a really interesting story to tell if you do have client projects and work like that. So that work would definitely be a good portfolio piece if you have that opportunity, which it's great to hear that you did. Mera, thank you so much. This is so interesting to learn about you and your background and talk about tech agencies and all the things. So I'm super appreciative that you came on the podcast today to share your story. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we totally wrap things up?
All right, maybe one thing.
Let's hear it.
So I know that like a lot of weight is like put on making those connections and like getting a job, I guess, through those connections that you make, like just networking, which is like super, super, super beneficial. Like most people that you reach out to within like the design community are going to be like super helpful. Like they're going to be very open, but also like don't be afraid to like just cold apply to places. I know like the numbers can be scary, like seeing that like 300 other people have applied, but like you never know. Mm-hmm. So definitely apply to those as well.
Yeah, I like to say success comes from a combination of hard work and getting lucky. Yeah. And the hard work part is like putting in the time, learning the technical design skills you need to do to get the job. And then the getting lucky part is like the serendipitous moment. You have to put yourself into like serendipitous moments. That means like applying to that job that, you're not sure if you totally qualify for, but you think it's possible and you're excited about it. And times that by 200 or 300 because that is often how much it takes. So it's I'm glad you shared that because that is realistic, quite frankly. Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, Mera, if anyone wanted to connect with you after listening to this episode or learn more about you online, where can they go?
So you can go to my Instagram, Mera_Alexandra. And you can also go to my website, meraabradley.com.cargo.site.
Perfect. And we'll make sure those links are in the show notes for this video. I'm personally going to go follow you on Instagram right after this because I'm an Instagram girly. But Mera, thank you again so much. This was so much fun. So great getting to know you, and we will definitely talk again soon.
Thank you, Alexa. This was wonderful. Great meeting you.
Well, I, for one, am so glad to hear Mera's design mentor had such a positive impact on her experience transitioning into her career in interaction design. Big thanks again to Mera for sharing her story and giving us some insights into what her UI UX design bootcamp experience was like. If you're ready to make the next big step with your career in design, Springboard offers a 9-month UI UX design bootcamp with one-on-one mentorship, real-world design projects, and personalized career coaching. And it comes with a job guarantee. Use the code ADAPTEDBYDESIGN to get $1,000 off enrollment for design bootcamps with Springboard. You can find more information in the description below. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date as new episodes drop. Again, my name is Alexa, and you've been listening to Adapted by Design, living the UX life. I'll see you next time.